Hey there, Heather. Hello there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to yet another Stone Cold hockey season. I did the 1965 season with the Leafs trying to four-peat as champions, but lost in the final to Montreal. And in 1968, I tried to lead the St. Louis Blues to the Stanley Cup Finals in real life, but a terrible final weekend home and home series loss to Minnesota ruined it, and the Blues didn't even make the playoffs. And the New York Rangers are your 1968 champions somehow. So anyway, we go chronologically next to 1971, where there were 14 teams in the NHL. You know, we had 12 last time, but the original six teams in one division and the six expansion teams in the other. This was another expansion year, 70-71. Vancouver and Buffalo came into the league. Vancouver crying foul over not getting a chance to get an expansion team in 1967, winning a third Canadian team in. Practically, it was Toronto and Montreal being pricks, if you will. But yeah, Vancouver almost got the Oakland Seals after the first year, but nope, they didn't. But Vancouver was given an expansion team alongside Buffalo, who also had a good chance. A regular team in 1967, but they couldn't. The East has five of the six original six teams, as Toronto, Rangers, Montreal, Boston, and Detroit are all in. Chicago got moved to the West. Now, that was on purpose because in 1970, after seeing the Blues get swept by the Reds, by the Orioles, speak English, Cutter. The Bruins and Bobby Orr's famous sleeping goal. The NHL decided that the expansion teams just couldn't cave up with the old guard. Montreal and Boston winning those cups, 12-0 against the expansion teams. No expansion team had won a Stanley Cup Finals game until 1974 with the Flyers, and that was Game 2 against the Bruins. So it took 6 years for an expansion team to win in a Stanley Cup Final game. So they moved Chicago to the West because, you know, Chicago is the most Western team. Strange they put Vancouver in the East, whereas they could have easily put Philly or Pittsburgh in the East. I would have probably put Philly in the East, but they didn't want to ruin Pittsburgh and Philly's rivalry, I guess. So the Vancouver Canucks expansion team with Toronto and Montreal, the other two Canadian teams, the New York Rangers, Buffalo getting their chance to come in to play Boston and Detroit. The West has Chicago, Minnesota, St. Louis, Philly, Pittsburgh, LA, and the California Seals, formerly of Oakland. Standings wise, that's how it is. It's the top four in each league teams. We are going to be looking at the Montreal Canadiens for the 70-71 season. Now, you may be asking, you're nuts, Cutter. You're a Leaf fan. Why is it Habs? Because of one certain goalie. You see, under the goalie, Rogie Fashon and Phil Meyer, those are two. Those are not two names I'm interested in. I'm interested in Ken Dryden and seeing if he can make a run. So it's a what if Ken Dryden actually came from the start of the 70-71 season and didn't only make six starts? What if he made more starts? Would Montreal be that dominant? They are playing 78 games, as you see here. Um, yeah, highlights, of course, hat tricks, memorable games, my fantasy. So the first night of the season saw the Vancouver Canucks face the LA Kings and win 7-2 as Charlie Hodge, the former Habs goalie, beat Dennis DeShorty, the former Blackhawk goalie. Kings only 2 goals. Dick Duff still around. Wow. And Yuta winning, one of the first Finnish, Swedish-born players in the NHL. Vancouver goes by Andre Boudrias. Remember him from Minnesota and sinking the Blues in the 68 simulation. Orland Kurtenbach, who won the Cup with the Rangers in the 68 simulation. Boudreaux his second. Paul Popio scoring. Wayne Mackey, who would soon die of brain cancer, unfortunately. Barry Wilkins, a great defenseman, who scored the first goal in Canucks history in real life, and Wayne Mackey his second goal. Go to Saturday. We don't have a Saturday game. Neither do the Leafs, which is unusual. California, Detroit, tied at 4. Gary Suke Smith tied Jim Rutherford. California goes by Carol Fadney, future Bruin. Ron Stackhouse. Where was he at? Oh, yeah, Penguins. Matanuzzi and Gary Jarrett. Detroit goes by Mr. Hockey, Gordie Howe, then Howe again, Gary Bergman, and then Tom Webster. Yes, that coach who once threw a stick at a referee. Minnesota Philly sees a 1-1 tie. Minico and Parent getting the points. Watson for Philly, Danny Grant from Minnesota. Buffalo-Pittsburgh, first Buffalo game ever. A tie with Pittsburgh. Crozier and Smith. I think Pittsburgh was Al Smith. Roger Crozier, a former Detroit goalie. Buffalo first goal of ever was Gilles Perreault. And then Joe Perreault scored the second time, and then Jerry Meehan scored. Pittsburgh goals by Ken Schenkel with 2, and Dean Prentice still around, 1 goal. Rangers St. Louis sees the Rangers win 2-1 as Bernie Wakely loses to Vermeulen. St. Louis got a goal by Sabourin. Remember him. But Bob Nevin still around with 2 goals for the Rangers. Part of the thing. Sunday the 11th, our first game in Philadelphia. For Boston saw what the? Is that real? 11-0. Don McLeod, who would be much better off in the WHA, gives up 11 goals in 1 game. Fuck. And the creepy thing is that 4 players, Espo, Hodge, Westfall, and Busick, scoring twice each. Dallas Smith, Derek Sanderson, and Bobby Orr were the other goal scorers. 11 goals. Are you nuts? There was only 1 penalty, and that was to Detroit. 11-0. California and Chicago saw a 2-2 tie as Gary Smith and Espo with points. Chicago was up 2-0 on goals by Chico Mackey and Pitt Martin, but California got goals by Ernie Hick and Dennis Hextall. Yes, related to Ron Hextall. Toronto Vancouver sees a 1-1 tie as Hodge and Jacques Plante as a Leaf. Can't see it, but it happened. Vancouver goal by Johnson, but Brad Selwood for Toronto. Our first game is in Philadelphia, and it will be Rogie versus Doug Favell, who proved to be a good Philly goalie. Bernie Parent, the backup. You won't see Parent in Philly colors for long. Just wait till the playoffs. Bruce Gamble, the former Leaf goalie, I believe this was 71. I think the next year was when Gamble had that heart attack during the game. But he wasn't playing. He wasn't on the ice. He was on the bench. Remember. So anyway, there's our rookie Vachon. Phil Meyer and Ken Dryden will be coming in soon enough. Philly with Bobby Clark. Star player, even though that he had diabetes, unfortunately. Serge Bernier, Andre Lacroix, who would be much better in the WHA. Gary Dornhofer, future commentator. Jean-Guy Gendron, Bill Lesick, Jim Johnson, Bobby Kelly, Hound Kelly? Yeah, Hound Kelly. Simone Nollet, who would be better off with the Kansas City team in 1975. Jerry Peters, Wayne Hillman, Lou Morrison, Barry Ashby, who would soon become the first assistant coach in history. Larry Hillman was still around. Joe Watson, I know Jimmy Watson. Rick McLeish, who was young and a great player. Earl Hesclat, Larry Hale, Brett Hughes, Denny Shock, Ed Van Impt, a decent defenseman, and Bill Sutherland. For Montreal, Rocky Vachon, who would go on to bigger and better things with LA and Detroit. Phil Meyer, who would do bigger and better things with Atlanta. And Ken Dryden, who would do bigger and better things when he got the starting goalie for Montreal. Yvon Cornway, the Roadrunner. Petey Mahovlich, Frank's brother. Well, Frank did not play for the 71 Habs yet. He got traded to the team, but he's not eligible to play for Montreal. Gentleman Jean Beliveau, Mark Tartif, who would do much better in the WHA. John Ferguson, the policeman. Guy Lapointe, Pointu. Mickey Redmond, who would be a better Detroit commentator. Phil Roberto, who scored, I think he scored an assist on Belleville's 500th career goal. I remember him for that. Henri Pocket Rocket Richard, J.C. Tremblay, better off with the Nordiques in the WHA. Claude LaRose, still around. Wow. Réjean Roule, Peanut, as they call him. Bobby Sheehan, Bill Collins, Serge Savard, a young Serge Savard. Neil Rochefort, Guy Charon, who at one time held the record for most games played without making the playoffs. I think Charon was traded later in the 71 season. Terry Harper, Larry Poirot, Ralph Backstrom. Oh yes, this was the season in which the Habs shrewdly traded Ralph Backstrom to the Kings to make sure that the Kings were not the worst team in the NHL, so that, well, Montreal had Oakland's first round pick in the 71 draft, and of course that was the year they got Guy Lafleur. Fred Hook, Jacques Laperriere, a young Jacques Laperriere, and a young Pierre Bouchard. First, 3 minutes into the game, Mark Tartif cannot take a shot. 2 minutes later. Okay, there it goes! Ron Gendron from Van Imp and Jim Johnson. And no, not the guy who does the WWE songs. That's Jim Johnston, not Johnson. 3 minutes later. Battle in the first one. Delivered the hit. Nope. Penalty. 2 minutes later. Philly with chance. Peters stopped by Vachon. 5 minutes later. Action Hillman does not do anything. Last moments of the period. Tartif, 2 minutes. This looks bad. I was right. Andre Lacroix. Evan Lacroix. Of course, from the Felician Van Imp. Who knew that Van Imp could pass the puck? Transfer Henri Pocket? No, Rogie with a save. Much later. Majeskior! Meep, meep, meep. Yvonne Cornway, his first from Mark Tartif. It's 2-1 Philly. 2 minutes. Five minutes later. On the fly, Bernier. 4-1. Put the kid in, they say. Well, they will now. That's it. From Jim Johnson and Chris Bernier. 5-1. Well, we got to put the kid in. 5 goals in the second period. 4 for Philly. We're in trouble. And yes, just like the St. Louis replay, that if Montreal loses or ties, because regular season overtime did not exist till 1983, then we have to simulate till Montreal wins. 3 minutes later, Tyler with a chance for a skier. Peter Piper Mahovlich. He scores from Phil Roberto and Claude LaRose. It's 5-2. Chance for a skier. Pocket rocket. He scores that goal. 5-3. Right. Cornway and Tremblay with the assist. Much later. Philly gets agitated, and Bernier goes off for 2. Can we take advantage? Cornway can't do it, and then I can Sharon. Well, we try. Skier! What the heck? It's Fran Huck. Who? Exactly. He scores from Rochefort and Lemaire, 5-4. Fran Huck. The center? Really? Yep. Wow. Empty net opportunity. No shot from Rocket. And we run out of time. We almost pulled off the impossible and score a tie. But we lose 5-4. Well, we tried. And Dryden did well in 22 minutes, not giving up a goal. So that kind of was cool. Philly goals by Gendron, Lacroix, Dornhofer, Clark, and Lasek. Our goals by Cornway, Peter Mahovlich, Henri Richard, and Fran Huck. I don't remember much on Fran Huck, if anything. So, excuse. Vancouver, St. Louis. Vancouver beats St. Louis. Dunk Wilson beats Glenn Hall. Still playing for the Blues, huh? Cam Cameron scoring as the Blues are the defending Western champions. Went to the 3rd straight Stanley Cup Finals and came out empty-handed again. Rosie Paymon, Kurtenbach, Dale Talon, the guy who was picked number 2 in the 1970 draft after Joe Perron, and Paul Papayol. So, I can't do it. We host Detroit and win 5-2 as Fashawn beat Rutherford. Detroit goes by Nick Libet and Gordie Howe, his 3rd, but we scored 5. Pete Mahovlich, Phil Roberto, Roadrunner Cornway, J.C. Tremblay, and Réjean Houle. So that means the next Montreal game we have to play. And it's not today. Vancouver, Vancouver finally loses the game 4-2 as Espo beats Dunk Wilson. Vancouver goes by Kurtenbach and Papil, but Chicago goes by Jerry Korup, Stan Nikita, Eric Nestorenko, and Bobby Hall getting their act together. Boston, LA. Boston wins 5-4. Eddie Johnston beats Jack Norris. LA goes by Joyle, Doug Robinson, and Bob Barry. Boosted goes by Ted Green, Phil Esposito again, Wayne Cashman, and Derek Sanderson. Buffalo Rangers tied at 2. Crozier and Vermeer. Buffalo trying to get their first win of their career. Stamkowski and Rachel Bear for the Rangers. Yes, the Polish rifle coming the Rangers. Wow. Floyd Smith for relief and Phil Goyette for Ranger scoring for the Sabres. Toronto, in the meantime, beats St. Louis 4-2, putting them at 0-3. Wakely loses to Plant. Bordelot and Jimmy Roberts for St. Louis. Toronto goes by Keon, Ron Ellis, Dave Keon. I forgot Dave Keon played in 71. And Billy McMillan, future Flame. Thursday the 15th, we go to Buffalo. In the meantime, Chicago Detroit tied 2-2. Minnesota crushed Pittsburgh 4-1 as Manigo took them Binkley. Pittsburgh goal by Prentice. Bill Goldsworthy scored not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4 times. How about that? Vancouver Philly tied at 2. So we go to Buffalo. They have 2 ties, and it will be Phil Meyer in the net against Roger Crozier. Oh, well, so Roger Crozier, the guy who was named MVP of the playoffs in 1966, even though the Red Wings lost the final. Joe Daly and Dave Dryden are in the nets. I think that Buffalo would have put Dave Dryden in the nets against Ken Dryden if the numbers was in Dryden's favor to play. Gilles Perreault, the number 1 overall pick, Buffalo won thanks to roulette wheel over Vancouver. Jerry Meehan, around Donnie Marshall, former Hab, I think. Steve Atkinson, Phil Goyette, former Ranger. Ron Anderson, Paul Andrea, former Penguin. Remember him. Floyd Smith, the former Leaf and player and future Leaf head coach. Reg Fleming, the first NHLer to be diagnosed with CTE. You saw him with Chicago in the 65 simulation and Rangers in 68. Cliff Schmaltz, Doug Barry, Skip Craig, Kevin O'Shea, Al Hamilton. How do I know? Al Hamilton, who had never retired with the Oilers, even though his WHA days. Jim Watson, soon to join his brother Joe Watson in Philly. Randy Riddlesup. That's a real name. Tracy Pratt, Jungie Talbot, him with the sweatsuits, tracksuits when he coached the Rangers. Billy Inglis and Francis Lacombe. Randy Rizzo. Randy. Oh, how did I know? Huh. He played. He was drafted 4th round by the Buffalo Sabres. William Rilosub. That's a weird name. But he did play in the NHL. 100 games, 8 goals. Okay. That's creepy. What's our time at? I must know. 17 minutes. Okay. Let's get this game going. 4 minutes into the game. Floyd Smith? No. Answer to score? Yes, we do. J.C. Tremblay. His second from Mark Tardif. The Quebec Nordique connection in the WHA 1-0. 1 minute later, Don Marshall tries to score on his former team. Can't. Another 1 minute. Henry Richard delivers a hit. 4 minutes later. A chance by Beliveau. Townsend takes the shot. Much later. Transfer for Sean Beliveau, but stopped by Grossier. Yep, 1-0 after a period, trying to deny Buffalo their first ever win in the NHL. Montreal, 3 minutes later, a battle, a fight between John Ferguson, yeah, him with the policeman, and Barry. What's his name? Doug Barry. I talked about John Ferguson, didn't I? The policeman? I think I did. 6 minutes later, in the fourth period, a hit. 3 minutes later, Montreal Skiers! Mark Tardif. His first goal of the season from Peter Mahovlich, 2-0 Habitants. 6 minutes later. Much later. Atkinson can't do anything. They're going to give us another chance? Yes, they do. Skier! Poito! 3-0 from Backstrom and Beliveau. So we're putting Buffalo to the sword, pun intended, because, their name is the Sabres. We're killing the clock. Tardif cannot do anything. It's here! Gilles Perreault in Buffalo from Al Hamilton. Much later. Penalty shot the Perrier for 2. We killed the zone on Meehan and Floyd Smith. Empty net opportunities now. We win 3-1. A big win for Phil Meyer. Doing his job, Tremblay, Tardif, and Laplante. Good old French Canadian boys with goals. Gilles Perreault for Buffalo. Montreal is 2-1 now. So we win. Friday night, Boston, California. Boston shuts out California. Ed Johnson with the win. Pye McKenzie with 2 goals. Wayne Carleton with the other. On Saturday night, we host Chicago. California, LA tied at 1. Minnesota beat Detroit 3-2. Yeah, we'll give you 3 games. Philly, Pittsburgh tied at 4. Buffalo beat St. Louis their first ever win 4-1 as Crozier takes down Hull. Boy, those Blues suck. They're 0-4. Paul Andrea, Randy Anderson, Andrea, and then Perreault scoring. Brett Berenson for St. Louis. Rangers Toronto saw a 1-1 tie between my 2 favorite teams, Vermeer and Plant. Points Gilbert scoring for New York, McMillan for T-Dot. So we host Chicago. Phil Meyer in the net against Gary Desjardins, who would soon to be Buffalo's goalie. Tony Esposito, their number 1, who used to be a Hab. He played 13 games for the 69 Habs. Bet you didn't know that, but it's true. And then they did that stupid intra-league draft in which Chicago drafted Espo off Montreal's roster. Gilles Meloche played for the Blackhawks. I didn't know that. And Ken Brown. So anyway, for Chicago, the Hall brothers, the Golden Jet and the Golden Letdown, Bobby and Dennis Hall. Stan Mikita, who cleaned up his act after his 2-year-old daughter at the time asked why Daddy was in the penalty box so much. Pitt Martin, who was traded from Boston to Chicago in the Phil Esposito trade. Chico Mackey, Chico Time, Jim Papin, former Leaf. Brian Campbell, Cliff Corral, Jerry Pinder, Dan Maloney, future Red Wing and Leaf Goon, I guess. Louis Gotti, Eric Nestorenko, still around. Pat Stapleton, good defenseman. Bill White, a good defenseman, former King. Jerry Korab, King Kong Korab for the Flyers. Oh no, the Sabres. Doug Moen, still around. Keith Magnuson, the guy who unfortunately died thanks to Rob Ravage's stupidity. Doug Jarrett, Paul Schmier, Larry Romanchik, and Rick Foley. First minute of the game, aggression, and 8 for 2. Avantage numérique, Chaplaner, Premier League de la saison, ici par Tremblay et Mahovlich. Battle aggression, Still for 2. Chicago Skiers, Avantage numérique, Cliff Curl, Premier But de la saison, ici par Makita. 3 minutes later. Chicago, Ebu! Pat Stapleton, Premier But de la saison, l'assist par Jarrett et Magnuson. 3 minutes later, battle and aggression. It will be Magnuson for 2. Can we try it? Mickey Redmond, aye. Lemaire gets bonked. Now go to the block. King Kong Korab. Avantage numérique. Lemaire, deuxième de la saison, l'assist par Rochefort et Tremblay. So it's 2-2. I know you'll be thinking, hang on a minute. Aren't you doing everything in French? Well, I could, but I'm like, I'll do all the major announcements, goal announcements in French. 2 minutes later, agitator. Chicago gets mad and gets agitated, and Magnuson takes the bait. 2 minutes. Avantage numérique. Mark Hickey, deuxième de la saison, assist par Harper and Bill Collins. Not Phil Collins, Bill Collins. 1 minute later, Chicago ties it. Brian Campbell, Premier But de la saison, l'assist par Mikita. This is going to be one heck of a game. 6 minutes later, Phil Roberto can't score. Then 5 minutes later, Chicago, Dan Maloney. Avantage numérique. Peter Mahavlich, Premier But de la saison, l'assist par Beliveau and Richard. 2 minutes later, no shot by Huck. 4-3 Montreal through 2. Unbelievable. 7 goals. Yeah. Chicago probably would do better if Espo was in the net. Early on in the third, we get Harper for 2. Schmier tries a shot. No. Papin tries, but can't get it through. Papin. 5 minutes later, we're trying to kill the clock. Okay, Chicago takes a penalty. It's Bill White for 2. Cornway, I can't, and I think that's the first power play we failed. 3 minutes later, Enforcer, aggression, a fight between Maloney and Ferguson. Well, they're both goons, so no big deal. Chikomaki trying his tie. No, sir. Empty nets coming up. Might not happen. It won't happen. We win 4-3. A big win for us. Meyer beats Desjardins. 7 goals in the first 2 periods, nothing in the third. Montreal with not one, not two, but 4 power play goals. Chicago had 1, so all their goals were on the power play. Lemaire, Tartif, and Mahavlich. Chicago goals by Coral, Stapleton, and Campbell 4-3. So we're 3-1 going into the thing. Of course, we will leave you on that note. Are we playing? Oh, we had to play the Rangers. Pittsburgh still has not won a game. St. Louis still has not won a game. They lost 2-1 as Wakely lost to Tony Esposito. Chicago goes by Papin and Mackey. Sabourin for St. Louis. Boy, St. Louis is them. They're 0-5. Pittsburgh's 0-2. Detroit still has yet to win a game. They're 0-4-2. Toronto beats Philly in the battle of the undefeated. It's 4-1. McLachlan. I don't remember him in that for Toronto. He beats Favel. McMillan, Mike Pellick, Ullman, and Paul Henderson. Of course, the 2 big names that Detroit traded just to get Frank Mahovlich in 1968. Philly with Chandron. Boston will beat Vancouver. They're 4-0. Cheevers beats Charlie Hodge, that is. Vancouver goes Kurtenbach with 2. Wayne Mackey and Rosie Paymont scoring. Boston goes by Fred Stanfield, Espo, Sanderson, Busick, and Espo. So Boston looking good 4-0. So we're 3-1. We got to face the New York Rangers. And that'll be the next video. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.